Hi, it's Dorothy Guiney with Scrapbooking Quebec. Today I'm here for the Scrapbook Nerd online shop, and I'm going to be creating a 12 by 12 layout featuring Echo Park Paper's Fall Fever collection. If you're tuning in between September 15th and 17th, 2023, the fall is in the air. Online crop is happening over on the Scrapbook Nerd Friends Group Facebook page. Be sure to head on over. There are prizes, challenges, and tons of inspiration. And you do have a week to complete these challenges. I'll put a link to the Facebook group below. If you're too late, no big deal. I have a fun technique to teach. I don't really have a name for it. I'm going to be working in blocks, kind of like a grid, and the assembly method results in a super fun, eclectic look. It's a great one for using up leftover collections as well. Also, I'm going to be talking about repurposing themed collections. I have autumn themed product and I'm going to be creating a summer layout. And what you see on the screen is what I've selected from the Fall Fever collection. I have paper and embellishments, but I also threw in some wood grain paper from Simple Stories, and I will be using dies from Tim Holtz. The last time I checked, this collection was still available at the Scrapbook Nerd, so I'm going to put a link to the shop along with the products I use in the description box below. So let's get started. You can see in advance I prepared a frame style foundation page with 3 sheets of paper. I did gut 2 of them, and there is a tutorial on my channel where I explain how to do that, so that will be listed and linked below. I want to talk about my photos. They measure 2.5 by 5 inches, and then I matted them in white cardstock. So what I did was I printed photos at 3.5 by 5, and I cut off 1/2 inch from the width. But I had to keep in mind that I needed to frame my photos before printing them so that I could cut off 1/2 inch. Also, that photo in the middle, I purposely selected a photo that I didn't mind covering up because that's where my title's going to go, and that's where all of my embellishing is going to come from. So that photo in the middle, I made sure there was nothing important in it. It's just a scenery photo with no people in it. Now I'm showing you my paper. So I have the 6 by 6 paper pad from the Fall Fever collection. That wood grain, I got it from behind the foundation page. And now I'm showing you the paper from the Fall Fever collection. So again, I am creating a summer layout with fall themed product. And I'm showing you both sides of the paper. So some of them have pumpkins, some of them have leaves, but the flip side are just colored tone on tone papers. This floral one I absolutely love. Now, yes, the colors are fall, but fall colors, don't forget, are perfect for outdoorsy layouts. And that's exactly what my layout is. It's an outdoorsy layout, but in the summer. I do have stickers from this collection. I don't end up using them. In this tray, I have some embellishments. So I'm showing you an ephemera pack from this Fall Fever collection. What I did was I went through them. The really super fall themed ones I kept in the packaging, but the ones that I knew I could either cover up the fall words or fall images, or the ones that were more general, I kept in my tray. That label there, for example, does have boots and a scarf, but those images are easily covered up. Same thing for the chipboard. What was super fall themed, I left in the bag, but the other ones I put in my tray. There's one there that says, "So very grateful today." Now, as far as I'm concerned, that can be used year round, and you can keep that in mind with any themed collection. Often the B-sides of the paper and the embellishments, some of them are very general themed. I also showed you an alpha die set. I'll talk more about that later. That was from Tim Holtz. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is cut myself some blocks of paper in 3 different pattern papers. So I'm cutting out 3 larger blocks. That's going to establish basically how my foundation page is laid out. And then I will cut out 3 smaller blocks. And the 3 smaller blocks that I cut out will end up being mattes for the photos that I showed you earlier. Now, I will put measurements for all of this on the screen a little bit later on, but again, I'm using fall themed paper, I'm using the B-sides, the colors work perfectly for a summer layout. Now, before I do any adhering, you're going to see me get out some ink, and I will be inking up all of the edges of these papers. When I mix up prints, I definitely like to add inking to the edges of the papers. It just creates a more cohesive look. And the ink I'm using is called Morning Mist by Versifying Claire. It is basically a smoky gray ink. I'm not going to make you watch all of it, but I do it to all 6 blocks that I've cut out. And you're going to see in a moment, I adhered the mats behind the photos, and I have my other 3 blocks all ready to go. You can see where I'm going with this. I'm more or less placing them across the middle of the page, the 3 big blocks and the 3 photos. Now what I want to do is start working on that middle block. So I took a piece of that floral paper from the 6x6 paper pad. I kind of tore it down there. And what I'm doing right now is creating some paper layers that I'm going to place behind that photo in the middle. What I'm doing right now is cutting myself out a block of this wood grain paper that I gutted from behind the foundation page, and both of those layers, I will put measurements for my layers on the screen, but I'm basically kind of winging it here, and I invite you to do the very same thing. The idea is just to create some layers and have them kind of stagger behind the photo. Once again, I am going to be adding a bit of ink to these layers, just like I did with all of the other papers. And what I will do is adhere these layers behind the middle photo, but everything else I'm going to leave separate for a little while I start building embellishment clusters and just playing around with it to see what everything looks like before actually committing it to the page. So what I will do here is get out all of my embellishing, and I am going to go through that with you kind of slowly, and then when I build the clusters I will speed it up a bit, because you're going to see off camera I created my own floral ephemera pack, and on that tray there you're going to see, I'm going to bring it down here, I have 53 different pieces. Some of them are layered flowers. I also have leaves. I also have sprigs. Now, to create these pieces, what I used were 2 old die sets from Tim Holtz. The collection was called Funky Florals, and it came out in 2018. Now, I can't list those in the description box below. However, there are other small floral alpha dies from Tim Holtz in the shop, so I will put those in my list below as well. I'm showing you what I used to create those 53 pieces. So I used 3 6x6 papers along with a few scraps. And again, with that, I created 53 pieces that I absolutely love. I love flower and leaf dies. I find them so incredibly useful. Just this month alone, for those 2 particular die sets, I created 3 different ephemera packs with them. So you can use them over and over again. I also showed you a tray there with my embellishing, but I showed you that earlier in the intro. But now what I'm showing you is another die set from Tim Holtz. I think it's called the Alphanumeric Stretch Lowercase and Number die set. It will be listed and linked below. And what I did off camera was create self-adhesive letters. So I'm going to show you how I did that. I showed you those sheets there. They are called Be Creative tape sheets. And what I did was I cut myself out that yellow paper, the size of the alphas. Then I cut myself out an adhesive sheet that would fit that yellow paper. That adhesive sheet has 2 backings on it. So I peeled off one of them, backed my yellow paper with it, and then what I did was I ran that adhesive backed yellow paper through my manual die cutting machine. I'm going to create 1 letter here for you just to show you how easy it is to create. So I'm putting one letter through, I'm going to roll it through, and what you're going to see is out pops a letter. It is backed in adhesive, so it makes adhering to the page really, really easy. It also makes it really flat on the page. I really do like how it looks. Anyway, I just wanted to give you an idea how I do that because I really do it all the time. And speaking of dies, alpha dies, once again, another workhorse. Just like floral dies and leaf dies, for me anyway, I use them over and over again. Now what I'm going to do is start building my embellishment clusters. And again, most of it is going to come out from that middle photo. So I'm just playing around with my title, which is on wax paper right now, and I decide I'm going to put it on the side. It says "with you," and this is a story about hanging out with my friend one week. And the page that's going to go with it is also going to have a bunch more photos because we did tons of stuff that week and had a lot of fun. Now what you see me doing is digging into the ephemera and chipboard, and I'm just adding a few layers just on the right side of that photo. I do plan to add some of those floral die cut pieces a bit later on, but I decide what I'm going to do right now is continue adhering these layers. So I put one layer, one label layer behind the double photo mats. The other ephemera piece, which says, I'm sorry, thankful, grateful, blessed, and then underneath it, it's something, I don't know, pumpkin-y. I hid the fall words and I simply use the words thankful, grateful, blessed. And again, as far as I'm concerned, that can be used all year long. And I also adhered the title. So my middle block is starting to look pretty good right now. Before diving into the flowers, what I am going to do is adhere these blocks to the page. So at this point, I'm not quite sure where my journaling is going to go. I'm thinking it may go at the bottom right of the page, or I may even be able to tuck it in somewhere in and around that middle block. But since the bottom of the page is an option, I'm just placing those blocks a little bit more towards the top than the bottom. They're still pretty centered, but they are a little bit more towards the top and the bottom. And for me, just if you're curious, the top of the block to the top of the page measures 2 inches. So I do that with all 3 blocks. And when I adhere them, I always start on the far right, then on the far left, and then I position the middle block. I just find that easier than doing one block after the other. Now I'm adhering the photos so that they fall right in the center of those large blocks. And again, if you're following my measurements, the photos with the mats measure 1 inch from the top of that middle block, and that positions them right in the middle of those large blocks. Now I'm going to start playing around with my florals. So I'm going to create a cluster at the top right of that middle photo, and later I will do it basically towards the bottom left of that photo. So the idea is the focus is going to be right through that middle block. So I'm starting with the top block there. I have 3 larger photos. I end up tucking in a smaller one as well. And I have quite a few leaves, and I'm bringing in some sprigs. And when I create floral clusters, I always start with the biggest flowers, then I come in with the biggest leaves, and then I finish off with the smaller flowers and this more smaller spriggy leaves, just like I was building a bouquet of flowers in a vase. So now I'm going to adhere this right away before continuing at the bottom. That's simply because I really like how it looks and I don't want to move it. So I started by adhering the leaves. Then I also, you may have noticed the adhesive I used to do the more spriggy leaves. I'm using it right now. That is called Sticky Specs by Ecstasy Crafts, and it's just an adhesive that's great for using for detailed pieces. There's like this sticky piece of paper and you place your detailed piece on top of it and it picks up the adhesive. So I also continued with the flowers at the top there, and some of them I popped up on foam adhesive, and now you can see I'm playing around with placement at the bottom there. Now for this one, what's going through my mind is I really want to keep this cluster a little bit smaller than the floral cluster at the top right. When I create clusters, I like to have them in different sizes. So in that top cluster, I have 3 large flowers, 1 small flower, and 5 leaves. In the bottom, I end up going with 2 large flowers, 1 small flower, and 3 leaves. So you get the idea. I just kept it a little bit smaller. And once again, for some of those flowers, I popped them up on foam adhesive. What you see me doing right now as well, the larger flowers are all in 2 layers. And what I was doing was fluffing up the petals of the top layer. It's a really nice way of adding dimension in those embellishment clusters. And you're going to see me come in and do that a little bit later on. Once again, I'm using that sticky specs to adhere those little spriggy leaves down. And here I go, coming in and just kind of fluffing up the petals of my flowers. I'm really, really happy with these floral clusters. There's another thing I'm going to do, and I frequently do this when I create floral embellishment clusters, is at the end, I come in and I pop up the tips of some of the leaves with a bit of foam adhesive, and that just creates a bit more dimension and interest and shadow within those embellishment clusters. But that's basically it. All I did off camera was my journaling, and I did ruffle up the torn edge of the paper that you see in the middle block, and I added 1 enamel block on that ephemera piece that reads thankful, grateful, and blessed. I ended up going with the journaling on vellum. I typed it up on my computer and printed it and just kind of had it peeking out from that big block in the middle, and I really like how that looks. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd greatly appreciate a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the Scrapbook Nerd YouTube channel, we would be thrilled if you did. The same thing for my channel, Scrapbooking Quebec. Also, make sure to check out the Scrapbook Nerd online shop for these fun supplies and lots more. Also, if you're tuning in between September 15th and 23rd, 2023, head on over to our Facebook group and check out the crop. Take care, and I will see you soon on YouTube. Bye-bye.